Hi guys, welcome to ST Traveler, and if you are tuning in today's podcast, we will be talking about Colombia. Colombia was my most recent trip right before the coronavirus shut down all of the borders, so I am going to be giving you all of the information that I can about my trip over there and what my thoughts were about the experience itself. This will probably be a 3-part podcast, maybe 4, depending on how long these episodes are. I am trying to keep them pretty short, so bear with me if they end up being a little bit longer than what I was anticipating. But first, before we dive into Colombia and all of the wonderful things about that country, I just wanted to give a couple of special shout outs. First, I want to give a special shout out to all of the people who decided to make donations to me. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. And it was not expected, but it is appreciated. There are some very hard times going on right now. It has been quite a struggle. And luckily, my job has now come back. So we're going back to more full-time hours. But that doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way just because of business flow and because there aren't as many people coming in as we would like right now. So hours might get affected. If you still want to make a donation, please feel free to. There is a donation button on my blog at www.sdtraveler.org. You can make your way there and donate however much you would like. Any amount is greatly appreciated. I also want to give a special shout out to everybody who has purchased pieces from my art studio in the last 3 months or so. I have seen that people are starting to kind of reach back out, which is amazing, and I really appreciate it. I'm trying to downsize what I have right now in my gallery, mainly because I have to downsize my life, considering that I went from living with my dad to now living in an apartment. So things have gotten a little bit scrunched. And I don't know when I'm going to be able to make more art for you guys, but right now I would really appreciate it if you would go and purchase the pieces that I currently have for sale. You can also go and purchase those at www.sdtraveler.org. I will leave a link in the description below for the donation and for my art gallery so that you guys can get anything that you would like over there quick and easy. And I appreciate anybody who wants to make any donation or any purchases. And I look forward to hearing from some of you. So now we're going to dive into Colombia, which, by the way, was quite a interesting trip. Normally when I go somewhere, I go for about 2 weeks, so 14 days total. Sometimes it ends up being 15 to 16, but that includes getting there and then getting home. So for this trip, unfortunately, it could only be 10 days because I was actually traveling with a friend. My friend decided to invite me after only knowing me for about 3.5-4 months, and she said that she wanted me to come along. She had another friend that was from Australia that was going to be joining us as well. She was a more experienced traveler, but I was really excited to get a chance to meet this person and to kind of get some tips and thoughts about traveling the world. The 3 of us going over to Colombia, it seemed like it would be a pretty good match and a good way to be able to get around. To be honest with you guys, I'm not really familiar with the language. I know very, very, very little Spanish, if any at all. So for me to be able to go to Colombia was actually a very insightful experience because it wasn't on my list of places to go visit, but I was still happy to get the chance to go. So when I agreed to go to Colombia, I was just kind of like there along for the ride. There were a couple of things that I wanted to see, but it wasn't, a trip where I really looked too deeply into things because I knew that no matter what my thoughts were on it, I was just there to kind of experience a new culture. So when we first got to Colombia, I have never experienced a culture shock like I did when I got to the actual country itself. For New Zealand and Iceland, it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't really a big culture shock. The airports were kind of in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't really have a lot to kind of go off of. When we landed in Colombia, there were so many people that were just hustling and bustling and going everywhere. And of course, the coronavirus was also just beginning to get a rise on the media. So they were checking temperatures and all that fun stuff. But really what got me was that I did not understand the language at all. So my friend was trying to help me to understand what was going on. And we got stopped a couple of times for temperatures and, of course, customs and all that. And it just really blew me away. Like, that was probably the biggest thing. Like, the first couple of hours was very daunting. We got there and then we had to get to our hostel. So we had to get a taxi. We had to get a taxi that was from the airport because they've had problems with trafficking and the people getting kidnapped out of those taxis. So it has to be a legitimate taxi. So we had to go through like an actual company to get it. And by the way, if you are thinking about going to Colombia, please keep this in mind. If you do decide to get a taxi and not get your own rental car, please, please, please go through a official taxi service. It's really important that you do that because if you're over there by yourself and you barely know the language, or even if you're with a group and you might seem intimidating with more people, anything could happen. So it's better to be safe than sorry, especially if you're going through Bogota. It's just not a great city. It's starting to kind of get better, but it's still pretty bad over there. So please be safe. Don't try and get all smart on, how to get around. The legitimate taxis is really going to be your safest and best bet. The other biggest thing over there was the travel, really. We had kind of like a really quick travel back. Well, travel there, really. The way back was not fun. Getting there was pretty quick, but we had to do about a 4.5 hour drive from where we live because VPS doesn't have very good deals on flights to get out of the country. It's because it's a very small airport. So when you have a really small airport, being able to go anywhere is going to cost you at least another $200, $300 just to fly. So we decided that we were going to go ahead and have my friend's husband drive us to New Orleans. And the ticket out of New Orleans was like $300 including taxes, which is actually really cheap to be able to go out of the country. So we went to New Orleans and then our flight went to Atlanta and then Atlanta straight to Bogota. And that was quite a doozy. It was weird to have to like fly back over and go to Atlanta and then like fly from Atlanta out. But we got lucky in terms of where we landed. And like our connecting flights, we didn't have to run halfway across the airport. We also had like a 3-hour layover. So we were able to get food and everything. So far on my travels out overseas, I have been pretty lucky when it comes to my actual travel experience. I have not yet had to hightail it to get to my next flight. At least not in a way where I'm like sweating and running halfway across like this huge airport like Atlanta or Houston or whatever and end up almost missing it. With that, I would say that my overall thoughts on Colombia is pretty positive. We did as much as we could for 10 days. Unfortunately, with the way that the travel worked out, we had some issues with a lot of our travel ending up being one whole day. And that kind of took away from, being able to actually experience things. And I felt like some of my experience was a little bit off because I didn't really understand what was happening most of the time. I had to either use my Google Translate or I had to have my friend try and tell me what was going on. And I imagine that was really frustrating for her to have to tell me multiple times over and over again through this 10-day experience what was actually happening since I didn't really understand. But if you're going to go to Colombia, I would say to not go by yourself if you can make that happen. I really felt like because I went with somebody, my experience was actually better and I got to see things. I think without somebody, I don't know how far I would have gotten. Either something bad would have happened or I would have gotten lost. I always get lost on a trip. So I was really fortunate to have people there with me to be able to help guide me and to kind of like follow. I wasn't really looking to be by myself and to kind of do the initiative and my usual, like, let's wing it and go for it. And I'm really grateful for those people. So really, that is just the first episode on my Colombia podcast. I know it's not really a lot. There's just little thoughts that I wanted to give you guys to kind of start out. And the next couple of podcasts, I'm going to dive more into like money and travel, language, hostels. And then the very last podcast will probably be about the overall effect with the coronavirus and what that did for us over there. And then the effect on getting home. I don't know if any of you guys are actually interested in that, but I'm going to give you the details anyway, just because it was a real experience. It was something that we went through, and it was something that, you know, could have really screwed us over. We could have really been stuck in that country for a very long time, and we met some people that can't go home because of that. So thank you guys for listening. If you guys want to check out any of my stuff, I'm going to leave the links down below. Again, my website is www.sdtraveler.org. I post articles almost every single day. Recently, it's been kind of hard to keep up just because of details of things that are happening. But I post my podcasts on there. I post my, sales, anything I have. So I really appreciate you guys. I hope you guys will tune into the next one. There will be more details in that. And thank you guys so much for all of your support. Because of you guys, I am able to do more and to be able to live my best life. And that's really all that I ask for. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much, fellow travelers.